next panel discussion on impactful global design trends. We hope you're ready. Shall we begin? So we zoom towards focusing not just on Indian design trends, but on all-encompassing global take. This is our final discussion for the day, ladies and gentlemen. This will be moderated by Sumisha Gilotra, Editor, Architect and Interiors, India. She'll be joining us later on the dais, but I'll start with inviting our panelists who will first present and then we'll get into the panel discussion. We have Babu Cherian, Principal Architect, BCA Architecture, Calicut.
Yes, a very good afternoon to all of you. And as Brijesh said, after a luxurious lunch, I think we are all ready for the next session. We heard about technology, we heard about luxury, and now we are going to hear about impactful global design. I think it's a very good topic to culminate today's session. We heard Parulji talking about decolonizing our mind, and again we heard, who said, I think Sushant saying that the present generation do not carry any colonial baggage. Now this is something which I would like to highlight upon, you know. If you look at architecture, 90% of the world architecture has been vernacular. So it has stood the test of time, it has been here for time immemorial, and I believe it will move on in the future as well. So how do we embrace it, how do we look at it, and how do we nurture it is something which we might be discussing today. You know, after the COVID, we are all talking about the physical and mental wellness through design. You know, so what is a global design trend going to be? For me, it's very simple things like the armchair is a global design trend which is going to rule the world. The design trend in the sense like, you know, it's a marriage of technology and craftsmanship. No, it evolves around the Vitruvian tripartite about happiness. So the major important thing which is going to happen is happiness in architecture, which we need to take in very, very seriously. Now, going back to the roots, I spoke about the vernacular architecture. We've been evolved from nature. I think we need to go back to the roots and we get back to earth itself. It's a symbolic way how a terracotta thing might degenerate and get back into the nature. So a conscious effort has to be done in identifying these materials and using them in future design, which would slowly evolve into the new design trend. Renovate and rehabilitate will be a most important thing which we need to look into. Newer buildings will take up a lot of space. It'll come out with a lot of wastage, a lot of carbon footprint. So we have a lot of old buildings which can be renovated, used in a better form, so that, you know, less of wastage do happen. We have many cities like Alhambra all being made into a great heritage site. So we have a lot of rich heritage with us, which has been brought down year by year. So I think we are, as designers, architects, we need to be sensitive on this issue and try to renovate or rather rehabilitate. Architecture for the society, this is a very important trend which is, we all need to give back something to society. Architecture can be a design form, it can be something that gets evolved. You know, this is a marketplace wherein some space has been used for selling things. So it could evolve by day into design space, and overnight it could be just another space. So, so it needn't be a major design intervention that we need to make, because world over our designers' interventions are very less. So such spaces will gain more popularity, and other one is a Kootambalam where it's a performing artist is performing. That space is designed in particular for the particular performing art. So how we nature society with our design spaces will play a major role, may make a major impact in future design trend. And spatial adaptability and flexibility, this is again a very important thing which we all need to look into. We always say that a kitchen is for cooking, a library is for reading. I don't think it will be the same again. I don't think it is the same anymore. So we might be forced to use all these spaces for different purposes. The open office has been a great example of it, like, you know, we work, we eat, we drink, we dance, we do many things together in this particular space. So, how we can use a particular space for various things could be the next order. That's all what I have to say. Of course, finally, the most important thing, technology and sustainability. We heard the word sustainability being talked about so much today, Now, I would request everybody just not to use that word to gain brownie points, but rather give a rather major emphasis on it, and let's be a doer. Let's do it in our designs and then show to the world that we can be sustainable. So, of course, technology, we cannot ever forget that technology. You can see the larger shadows they're casting because it might be a smaller one, but it does cast a long shadow. Thank you.
So I was not very clear about the 3-minute presentation, so I've set it like a precursor to starting this panel discussion. I got some points from the team. I took the points like a good boy. So out of all the points, I'm just going to take up 2, and I'm going to take my own interpretation of the 2 points. So we are looking at this increased awareness of physical and mental wellness in design. So wellness is in design, as an aspect, and looking at a very non-physical part of wellness in design. And the second bit, the renovation and the rehabilitation of existing architecture over newer constructions. So here I won't talk about architecture as such, because I think a lot of work has already been done on adaptive reuse, and we all know about it a lot. But there could be a completely different take on rehabilitation of objects. So, so wellness is a state of being in good health, and wellness in design is wellness of the end user, basically. End user could be a person we are doing a house for, or it could be the people who are using the building, it could be the patients in the hospital, whoever. So I've been pondering about this idea for some time, and I think this is shifting, and I think that shift is what is one of the global design trends that I feel is emerging. It's basically a very fine aspect where the end user is becoming more and more conscious. So, earlier as architects and interior designers and designers, we were in this state of power. There was this consortium of architects will stand and we'll dictate कि हम तुम्हारे लिए ऐसे कुछ बनाएंगे और जाओ रहो. It's not like that anymore. So people know what they want, and they want to be they want to be physically involved and mentally involved in the design process. So the impactful global design trend is the shift of the emphasis from the end product to the process of design. And this is not for the architect, this is actually for the end user. The end user is becoming more and more involved in the in the process of design, rather than हम उनको क्या दे रहे हैं, right? That's because they've started realizing that the built or the object, it needs to start reciprocating with them. It needs to start reciprocating with their character. It needs to start reciprocating with their lifestyle. It needs to start reciprocating with their needs. So what started shifting is if there are 2 people I'm doing houses for and they know each other, earlier it used to be like कि उसका घर तो ऐसा बना है, ऐसा सा कुछ बना के दे दो. But now people are actually wanting themselves to be part of a process. So they don't want me to design a house for them, or they don't want me to design a building for them. They want me to design a process for them in which they are a part of it. And their consciousness can be taken through, and the end result that comes out of it is going to have their personality within it. So I think that's going to be a big thing. I was just reading up on this. So this is the biggest example of collaborative design. It's a dynamic building. It's designed in a way that the building can completely transform, like the way the company is going to transform, and they know this company is not static. The company will keep on moving. The people in the company will keep on moving, and the building itself is going to keep on moving. So, a small example of a building that we had done. This is a small intervention to a very complex project. It was somebody's individual house, and this house reflects the personality, and it just does not physically reflect the personality. It reflects the ambition. It reflects their sense of aesthetic. It reflects the kind of what they want to portray to people who visit this space. The second aspect, which I really feel very strongly about, is these high-end objects that we're doing houses and we're doing hotels, we're putting chandeliers and putting panels and we're putting furniture, this, that. Architects have this problem कि कोई बोलता है ना मेरे पास पुराना कुछ furniture पड़ा है, we don't want to use it. We like कि हमको तो बांधो मत कोई चीज़ करने से, हमको तो ऐसे कुछ करना है. So I think something very important is that we need to start consciously looking at beautiful refurbished material, like a beautifully done baccarat chandelier, which is 150 years old, which is refurbished. We can use it. There is no reason why you have to buy a new piece. And you use it, and there is so much sensitivity, there is so much history, there's so much, I would say, emotion associated with something like that. So I think this is something that we can start looking at, and we can start looking at not just for alternate projects, but for mainstream projects, So, yeah, broadly that's my take on it. Let's see how the discussion goes.
Hi everyone. So when Sumisha called me for this talk, I was traveling, and I came back and I got down with a viral fever. I just recovered today morning, not fully. And I didn't have time to make a presentation. So I did like what a true-blooded architect really does: readapt, reuse, and conserve the data footprint. So I took out around 70 slides of my previous presentation and asked my staff to condense into 30. So I reached the target of 3 minutes. So now coming to the topic, it's impactful global trends. The first thing that I would like to say is there is nothing like a global trend in per se. Trends I feel is a very superficial word, and it's something which is not lasting. It's not something which is complete. So what I look at when we look at design in a global context or a local context or whatever context it is, from a micro to a very macro context, is the context which is very important. There is no design which can be complete unless you understand it totally. And how do you understand it totally? We all know these things basically. The first, the use, the context, the culture, the location, the economics, the end users, the people in the society who are going to appreciate the design or going to use the design or understand the design. So a lot of factors go in to create a impactful design. And for that, as I said, the only word that we look at is context, which encompasses all these parameters. So I would like to run through a few of the slides and explain to you what we feel about the projects. I think we have just taken, as I told you, we have just taken a few projects. So coming to it, now when we talk about global, the biggest fear that I have, as I always speak on every forum, is when things start getting global. Global is standardization and globalization. These are two things which are being intermixed. And the fear is extremely high. I have spoken about this in almost every forum, that there was a time when I would travel to Paris, I would like to enjoy the Eiffel Tower, I would like to enjoy the local cuisine. And when I go to Delhi, I want to go to the Paratha Wala Gali, and in Bangalore, I want to eat a dosa in Vidyarthi Bhavan. I don't want to eat a standard dosa or everywhere, wherever I travel all over the world. But unfortunately today, when I travel anywhere in the world, these are the buildings that I see. These could be anywhere. Can anyone guess where these buildings are from? These could be from absolutely anywhere. Bangalore, it could be from my place, Hubli, it could be from London. So there is absolutely no connect. So in the name of standardization, we see some of the biggest enterprises, whether it's in the field of real estate, hospitality, or the other thing which is retail out here, malls, they all look the same. The shops are the same, the brands are the same. So what's the fun? Today we all enjoy traveling, we miss traveling a lot. But if we are traveling again to experience the same thing over and over again, do you think this is what we are looking at? And do you think this is a global trend? And if it is, I think we should be very fearful because we are making the world a very boring place. So I feel the first thing that we have to look out, it's so boring the slide is not moving. So I call this, the next 3-4 projects I'm speaking about, I call it an ode to context. Now this particular project is a project which was very dear to my heart, which we had designed when I was just out of the School of Architecture a long time ago. This was in a very small rural village in north of Karnataka called Hulkoti. A lot of people would not even know probably where this is. And these clients absolutely did not have a budget. It belonged to a local minister and a philanthropist who wanted us to use the local people to execute this work. And he came with a budget which was ridiculous. The temperatures here were at 44, 48 degrees in summer. And it was a highly complex thing. And it was the Institute of Naturopathy and Yogic Sciences. So first I'll not elaborate on the plan and those things because I would not like to spend time on that. When I come on to the visuals, the first thing that we did here to conserve cost was, we went around, identified old warehouses, extremely old godowns. We wouldn't call them warehouses those days. We broke those warehouses. We got all these stones by breaking out those warehouses. We did identify a few colored stones from different parts to add character. We used local people who were not necessarily masons, and we crafted this particular building with wide walls, deep set windows, filler slabs, and very local construction. Now this area is known for its red fertile soil and a very dry area which is full of the famous red chilies of Byadgi. So if you look at the colors, this building symbolizes the extremely rural architecture of North Karnataka. It is extremely cost sensitive, it is very climate sensitive, it's very easy to construct. This artwork was done by the local painters there. Even the construction was done with the local laborers. The filler slabs were not fancy where we could use those beautiful pots and things like that. We had to go for simple tiles, and we had built it at a very, very low cost. And today people talk about reducing air conditioning. I am very happy to say that this particular building, we don't even need fans. So these are the interior views of the place where you just water the landscape. You can see it's a very arid climate, so the lawns also don't grow well. But it serves for evaporative cooling where the entire campus becomes cool. And it's bright and vibrant as the people out there. And the construction is extremely, and if you see the ends, the corners of the building, we have treated with these elements which we have plastered, which we call kumbis in North Karnataka. This is done to reduce the cost of expensive dressing at the corners. So when we talk about craftsmanship also, the involvement of the right amount of craftsmanship in the type of project, when we talk about luxury, you can go to an extreme level of craftsmanship because it is time, cost, material consuming. But when we play onto this, the minimalism of craftsmanship, yet keeping the traditions alive, becomes very important. So this another project for the same client, which had a little more historical value, because this was built, which is not very far from Badami, Pattatkal and Aihole. And you can see that's the famous Durga temple of Aihole. And this was the Swami Ramakrishna Vivekananda ashram we did. We had the ashes of Mahatma Gandhi on this site. So he was very fond of the word Om. So we encircled it with the Om in the master plan, and we built the structures around it. Now if you see the austerity that comes in here for the monks, the monastic order, that's what has gone into the design of these buildings. If you see, the plinths are very high, the sills are raised on top, and we have these beautiful crafted barrel vaults which hold cold air below and keep the place cool in this particular area. And the form of the place is inspired by the Durga temple of Aihole, keeping in mind the continuity of the cultural and the historical context of the place. And if you see these corridors, which are shaded gently, are done very playfully, reflecting nirvana happens under the sky. So this is how the monks sit, and these are the different corridors, inspired by the local architecture, but still built using modern methods, fused with traditional craftsmanship in a very simplistic way. Now, when we look at projects, every project I feel has its own context. When we are looking at a project on an urban scale, when we are looking at large projects, when we are looking at millions of square feet, these are also buildings which are a true reality of our nation or of the world. These are not places where we can always play with our traditional building materials, because the time of construction also is very important, and the ability for getting people to construct buildings of that size. So what happens is that the template of material, the technology that we use, is not as important as compared to the way we want to use technology, whether it is traditional, whether it is rural, whether it's modern, or whether it's something futuristic. The whole thing is having an empathy to the subject and then trying to create a project. So this is a particular project, a very, very luxurious residential apartment building built in a prime location in Chennai. And if you particularly see this, this building, I joked, you know what, we have these pinnacles on top and we have a very simple, clean building below. Because we planned the economics also. The penthouses on top, we could have this big glazing, below it was simplistic. So we managed costs. And then when my client asked me, why did you do this particular facade, I joked it's like a Tamilian gentleman, you know, dressed in his conservative veshti below, but with an illuminated mind above. So I showed him the image of Chidambaram. So that was in satire, of course. So this particular building, if you see, I put an image of a mosque there because it's next to a historical site called Thousand Lights Mosque. And if you see, the 4 pinnacles are actually a sublime takeoff from the pinnacle, from the minarets of a mosque, interpreted in a very conventional way. And the name of the mosque is Thousand Lights Mosque. So we created a play of light all across the project, where you have laser throws, you have a lot of light happening, whether it's at the surface, whether it's behind. And if you look at the imagery which has come in and evolved sublimely, it pays respect to its neighboring building, while breaking away from being depictive of any religion or any culture, and neutral. And of course, we have had elements from Cholamandalam. We have bought things from Mahabalipuram sculptures and other things, and added it to the building to create a wholesome experience. This particular project that we are designing in Nairobi, so when we were designing a few projects in Nairobi, it was a very interesting experience. And when we think of East Africa, the first thing that comes into mind is safaris, jungles, the landscape. And Nairobi is very beautiful, a very green place. The climate is as good as Bangalore, if not better, with less pollution. And we had a very interesting take on the whole subject. So if you see the way the plans also evolved, it's not organized, it's not rectangular, but if you see, it's like a jungle where things are more abstracted both in the plan. And when we look at the facade on the right, you can see the elements that take in, the wooden elements, interspread with landscaped elements, and the whole building goes up as a luxury tower, but at the same time, it's very respectful to the place and the setting that it's designed in. So the whole language of architecture changes, but the context does not. So we have to respect the context. The last project, since I didn't have too much to talk on, this was a design competition for which I think a lot of architects had participated, and nobody has got any news about it after that. This was done during the COVID one. So this was a heritage and cultural complex for Mata Amritanand Mai. And the site was in Mahabalipuram, and they were very clear that they didn't have a particular brief. They wanted us to come out with a brief. So we were just wondering, what do we do? Do we recreate Cholamandalam village, or do we recreate Mahabalipuram? Means, are we here only to rebuild the past, take away from it? Or are we a generation, a race, who can draw from it and take it forward and create an abstracted view of doing things? Like when we look at Sanatan Dharma, they wanted it as a museum for Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma has slokas, it has Vedas, it has so many things. All of them are in abstract. And when we talk about God, God itself is an abstract entity. So we started looking at this particular building. We started thinking, and when we started looking at a name, Amritanand Mai. Amrita means the nectar of immortality. So here what happens is that the subject was monumental, the client was monumental, and when we started looking at Amruta, the nectar of immortality came from a mythological story, or you call it a Vedic story or whatever it is, where it happened from the churning of the ocean between the gods and the asuras, during which the nectar came out along with a lot of other things. So things start in the void, then the sound of the Om comes in, then the Adi Parishakti, the Trimurti, and her name herself, Amritamanandmayi. So we did a lot of studies about the subject, because we know a lot of things about a lot of things, but we don't really study about them. So we did study about a lot of things. We did study about local language. We did study about Mahabalipuram, where you could see the ocean, the beautiful rippling waves. This was the place where the tsunami had also happened, the Samudra Manthan actually. And then we started looking at a lot of details, the rise of the Kundalini Shakti, a lot of things, the importance of yantras. And from there we started manifesting the design. When the ocean starts getting churned, you start getting the vibrations of the Oma, and from there the entire building comes out in the form of a Samudra Manthana. So if you see, these are the waves of the Samudra Manthana. You have the lotus or the Kundalini spine which evolves in the center, which is 108 meters tall, which is a very spiritual number for the particular area. And this entire thing is set on a strong foundation of the architecture of Mahabalipuram, where we can say that our culture is not something which started and stopped, but which has continued and evolved and morphed. So this is how we started addressing this particular building and came out with the concept of Samudra Manthana. Of course, the structure was designed to be executed fast. It had to be extremely green, it had to be carbon zero, it had to be solar friendly, it had to be a lot of other things which I would not like to take here. But the whole story that I would like to come to you today is, there is no trend in design. It's all about mindfulness. And I think if we all have mindfulness, I think design will be more sustainable, more experiential, and more personal. We have to make design personal, where we all can relish it and enjoy it, rather than something that we just pass through. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm the last speaker, so, you know, I think, okay, today you're going to put present? I'm not going to talk about architecture. What I'm going to talk about is the situations we put ourselves in, you know. I think there's a lot of, architecture doesn't exist in isolation. Design doesn't exist in isolation. Design is nothing but proportion, balance, light versus shadow, height versus depth, all those things. So it's just about balance at the end of the day. So today what I'm talking about is our lives, you know, and yeah, I'm a guy just like everyone else. We can be brilliant, we can be stupid, we can be given 5 minutes to design something and have nothing to do. So I think circumstance plays a huge role, and I think we've been putting ourselves as a collective in certain circumstances, which obviously has been dictated, have dictated our design choices or our fetishes, so to speak. Okay, so this is a simple diagram of a person. There's the red part, which is built. There's the work. There's family. There's nature. These are certain balances which exist in everyone's lives. These are certain choices which exist in everyone's lives. Okay, so this cube. Okay, so I mean, all of us are aware, you know, our lifestyles are pretty skewed. Our cities have become basically workspaces where people have come. Bangalore's a classic example where IT firms came in, thousands and thousands of people come here to work, get a job, earn a living, etc., etc. Yes, it developed a lot. Then they become centers of employment, and all right. So what has happened is at the start itself, there's been this thing that work is more important, and we have had, of course, you know, first 10 years, say 2000 to 2010, so many people just came into the cities. Development governments weren't capable of dealing with the kind of population coming in. There was no planning. There was none. But there's an excuse maybe till 2010. But after that, probably there's no excuse. So we've been living in you know, this urban mess for a while, which has been sucking up with real estate prices, because you don't have infrastructure to access more land. This is artificially being choked up. and you end up spending all your money, your resources, your time sitting on those roads, commuting to work. And this is the situation, spending less time with your family, spending less time in nature, by yourself. So this is a circumstance we have put ourselves in. And then what have we've been doing? So everything's been about work, earning money, making a living, paying for that loan, your EMI, etc., etc. Then the only way, the aesthetics which have been developing has been about the money. It's not been about the time spending with family because it's not there. So it's been about money, it's been about superficial things, it's been about buying small houses, plastering with exclusive materials. Okay, so that's a larger perspective. A language of architecture emanating from consumption. Our urban spaces became malls, our only malls in Bangalore. I don't know where else to go, you know. Malls, consumption. So these are reflective of certain choices, certain circumstances we find. So all the red are the highlighted areas of what we have given importance to in the last 15, 20 years. Okay, so now we had a pause. Okay, now very few people get it. I'm 43 right now. I got a pause in my 40s, which I don't think anyone gets. I think we should be very, very, very lucky. Of course, it was a terrible time for a lot of people. A lot of people are still struggling to get over this. But at least what everyone did is there was some amount of introspection. And this is something which I feel will be a global trend. Or I'm hopeful that it leads to a global trend in the future. Okay, we got to spend time with our family. We got like maybe as much time as maybe the last 10 years, you know, with our kids, wives, spouses, etc., etc. We communicated with people. We had Zoom calls with friends who we never caught up with in the last 10 years. We did more Zoom calls during the... So, we saved a lot of money. We realized how simple existence is. We realized how easy to sustain it is to sustain. We don't need all the frills. We didn't go, malls are shut. We didn't have to go and buy clothes. We didn't have to be probably roaming around in our boxers and we didn't really need anything, okay? We were cooking our own food. We were not reliant on maids to come in, etc., etc. So I think it was quite a kind of transportation, you know, almost like a little portal which we went through, which we should not forget. We started we started communicating with our communities for the first time. Maybe we suddenly knew our neighbors for the first time. We were there for each other. We started sharing things. We started doing things which again was not there in our previous lives. So these are things which I feel are the seeds of what we need in the future. Living simply, breaking away from consumption, and a focus on reducing wastage. Sharing. One guy has a car, the other guy doesn't have a car, you take my car. A lot of things started happening, yeah. Okay, so now what I'm kind of saying is that all of us, we've gone back to work, but though it feels the same, I'm hoping that it isn't. Okay, I'm hoping that we carry what we experienced in these 2 years and we move towards all the things which made us happier during the pandemic. Spending more time with our family, where our exposure to greenery is not going for vacation for 1 week in a year. You know, that's not the balance which we have to get into our cities. Our cities have to become about balance. Only then can we actually look at aesthetics, look at all of these things which reflect that ideology. We have to create worlds which are systemic to the architecture which we want to kind of talk about. And the sharing economy becomes a big thing which I think is going to work out in the future, where people will start sharing more. You have an empty room in your house, you give it to Airbnb. So you are not reliant completely on one job. And you're not running around money. You have an empty terrace, which we are doing actually. We have an empty terrace, we give it to a person, he comes and farms on a terrace. And he gives us certain proportion of whatever he does. So I really feel that's the way to go. And I'm hoping for this becoming a main trend as we go ahead. That's it. Thank you.
Hi, pleasure to be here amongst you. A lot of this has already been said by my colleague Bijit, but the world is changing and so are the construction norms, technology, are also changing and evolving as we go along. We do appreciate that some traditional forms are still available, but the needs of today's world are also very diverse, very different, and constantly evolving. Our vision is to improve people's lives by reimagining spaces. Okay, so, we today in today's day and age, we all talk about carbon emission. We've all heard of a large cement company hiving off its assets in India because it didn't fit their global CO2 profile, and they felt they needed to become more conscious with regard to the carbon emission norms, and their philosophy changed altogether. India is the world's fourth biggest emitter of carbon dioxide, and that's the status of various other countries. So essentially, balanced projects and efficiency meet net zero targets through exploring alternative and sustainable materials. We aim at delivering smarter, healthier, and more sustainable buildings through leveraging emerging technologies and innovative products. The way we construct plays an important role. It is said that 30% of the world's pollution is caused by construction projects. Things like dry construction technology, 4 times faster technologies, lower water consumption, materials that can be recycled and resalvaged are gaining in prominence today. We find that internationally, acceptance of dry construction technology is gaining in prominence. And that last project was a project done by the government of India. It was a project which was done for the offices that were being relocated, for the new offices that were coming up in Delhi. You see steel construction with various forms of cladding starting to take shape in India. You see lower construction waste, less energy expenditure, more durable, and adherence to green standards gaining prominence as we go along. These are some projects done with some of these new construction technology methods. It's an engineering institute. This is another university. This is a residential building. You have a steel structure being cladded by boards. This is some facade cladding which has been done. This is a hotel project, extensively used cement boards as a cladding material and as a wall partition material. A boutique property in Lonavala, made to blend with the environment, again using new age and new generation building products. This is a project in Ahmedabad where they wanted to control the light coming into the building, control the heat that the light was generating. So motorized louvers were made using innovative building products. This is of course the Central Vista projects that came up, the new buildings which came up to rehabilitate the government offices that were coming up, all steel structures clad with cement boards. A high-end project in Goa, a hotel project in Goa. Again, something which blends with the environment without really harming the environment. These kind of products don't lead to topsoil erosion. They don't lead to any form of excessive water consumption, any excessive debris creation, and are extremely environmentally friendly. They look like wood without really being wood. This is a W hotel in Goa. All the cement planks, the planks that you see are cement planks. This is a hospital project in Surat where the entire facade has a natural stone look, but with lightweight cement boards. This is a project very much in Bangalore, the Sophia School. Again, lightweight cement boards had clad the building to give it a very natural look. An iconic building in Kuwait called the Al Hamra Towers. Again, this is a new form of construction technology. 3 sides a glass facade, 1 side has cement board on it. These are some healthcare projects. Again, partitions, the wall to room partitions, room to corridor partitions, room to bathroom partitions, all made with cement boards. Again, a hotel, Marriott, again, a lot of drywall construction, hybrid solutions have been used here. This is a mall coming up. You see the solid wall panels being used. Much faster construction, lower water consumption, less debris creation. So these are some other projects that have been used. I've used these new age and new generation and the new way people are starting to build. This is just to give you a small overview of how some of our products are blending in with new design concepts being conceptualized by the world over. I mean, just to give you a perspective, in India, the fiber cement board consumption, per capita consumption, would be, some years back, was about 200 grams per capita. It has today probably gone up to about 400 grams per capita. There are countries like China, which is about 1.3 kgs. US is about 4.6 kgs per capita. A country like Thailand today is probably leads at about 19.4 kgs per capita consumption of fiber cement boards. These boards don't involve any pulling down of trees. They don't involve issues like topsoil erosion. As I said again, low water consumption. We also in India probably consume fly ash, which is a waste product, and very low on carbon emissions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
I think after all those presentations, I don't really have much to say. You all have dissected and beautifully discussed the topic and shown us what trends are and what trends aren't. So really kudos to all of you to bring everything together. I think what we really understood is that global design trends predominantly include contextual design, collaboration, revisiting the past, being conscious, experimenting with material, and of course, like Indrajit said, being mindful about the way we design. Am I right or wrong?
But after...
I'm now really worried to use the word trends because I think I'm going to get a lot of backlash from all of you. So I'm going to consciously avoid using the word. But let's start with you, Babu. We all know that your heart really lies with vernacular architecture. But I'm sure with moving times and looking at what's happening globally, you're also trying to modernize or being more contextual or contemporary. Would you like to share some thoughts on that?
So, Mishra, the topic, vernacular architecture in the 21st century is a pretty long topic that might need not a day or two or maybe weeks or months to discuss and deliberate upon. It is also a very sensitive thing to talk about. Of course, in this world when we are, especially if you take India, it's a major global consumerist country. We are a vendor-driven society now where a lot of products from all across the world comes and get accumulated in our country. And we are in sort of a crossroads on what to use, what not to use. Of course, when we are sort of pushed with these many materials, there's another side to it, like there is a cost impact. So which is definitely is big. You can't simply not factor in, you need to factor it in. So definitely when you think about all these issues, getting back to the roots and the vernacular architecture will play a pivotal role. Because cost is a major factor. I don't mean to say that vernacular architecture comes cheap, it doesn't. But connecting to our the community and culture has also been a great thinking process. Like, people have always been started thinking about their culture in a big way. And getting back to the roots has also been very important. And again, as I spoke in my presentation, 98% of the world architecture has always been vernacular. So we cannot just wipe it away. It is here to stay. It has stood the test of time. It has been here for thousands of years. So one fine morning, you cannot say it will be away. What I feel, vernacular architecture will come back in a big way, majorly because everyone needs to connect to the roots. So we were talking about the colonial baggage which you have thrown away. So where do we go? We need to be very indigenous about how we do things. I come from that part of India which is very green. I come from the state Kerala. We have a very rich architecture there, which has been, whether you look at the houses, whether you look at the temples, anything and everything is so very beautiful. And I think it has been one very reason why we've been able to attract tourists from all across the world. It has been rated by the National Geographic as the 50 must-see places in the world. And this is mainly because of the vernacular architecture. We have not been showcasing any modern. And as Yatin said in his presentation, we have become so much into modern materials. He showed a slide wherein I wouldn't say what sort of building it is. I would not dare to say. You see a lot of glass facades. It does not have any context. It could be from Calcutta, it could be from Madras, it could be from Bangalore. It's totally rootless. So there will be a question from people. Your next generation will definitely ask you, what are you aiming at? What are you looking at? Where are you getting these ideas from? So we need to give them an answer, and that answer is definitely vernacular.
Absolutely. I think not just vernacular, not just contextual. What's very interesting is also the so-called trend, which I don't know how new or old it is, but of working with local communities. So when Diana Kellogg designed that school in Rajasthan, the whole world was talking about it. But of course we have architects.
Can I interrupt there? Now we need a foreign architect to do such things for it to become an international thing. I think that is where we all as designers to come forth and address these issues. Like we need a foreign architect from Canada to come and do this thing. We need Sabyasachi to come out with their uniforms. So then it becomes a global trend. It becomes an Instagrammable material. We get tagged into that. I think so that's a point there.
In fact, we have amongst us today so many of you architects. We have Brajesh, we have Ms. Saveri, who have been doing that for years. So it's more about actually looking back in the past than looking to the West for the trends that we are actually recreating in the current scenario, I would believe. But Indrajit, I saw in your presentation, you created some fantastic projects. I mean, those were really mind-blowing. And besides being mind-blowing, there was a great combination of having a very futuristic look while being contextual. And you design a lot of townships, a lot of large projects. So what are the global trends which you think are actually applicable to the country?
What are designers? Designers are people who address a particular challenge. A challenge is to serve a need. And what is need? Now, need can be like a workplace, housing for all. We know there are millions and millions of people who are homeless even today. And there are many more millions who are living in homes which are not fit for living. And there are certain privileged ones who are living in homes which are not well designed enough for living. And when we say about past, we have to absolutely respect our past. But as designers, we have to change our vision to 360 degrees. We have to look in the past, we have to look in the future, we have to look at around us, what's happening. Draw from all the entire pool and then we go ahead. Yes, we had phenomenal, we developed phenomenal cars, we had trains for short distance transport. We evolved to planes for, traveling and connecting different continents, different countries. And then we are now developing rockets and satellites to connect the universe. So with time and technology, needs do change. India was known for its brilliant draperies, But I think absolutely I'm not seeing a single one in a drapery right here today. Everybody is into stitched clothes. But there can be an Indianness to the stitched clothes. It doesn't mean that you're doing away or criticizing draperies. Evolution is drawing in the context of India, the context of where we are in, whether it's India, whether it's the US, whether it's Britain, whichever country we are in, drawing in a context does not mean non-adaptability to the future or the present or the context. So as long as we are able to encompass all of these things and not dictate a view, I feel that is where design comes into play. Creating a solution where we could move away from TVs, we could move away from large screens, we could move away from telephones. And today we have a small mobile phone which gives us a compass, which connects us to people, which stores information, acts as a bank. So this has been evolution. And the way we do it, how we customize it to our way of doing things is what makes design.
Absolutely. Rudraksh, so we've spoken about how contextual your projects are, and earlier in the day we discussed conscious design luxury. That's also something which is taking from sustainability but being a little more conscious when you're designing. I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
Conscious design luxury. Confusing. So luxury as an aspect is just a state of mind.
Not just conscious design in general.
So conscious design is a prerequisite. I think all design has to be conscious. I don't think conscious is a subset of anything when it comes to design. A 360-degree approach is very important. All of them are talking about the future and the past. There are also the parallels. So there is something like this happening in some other civilization. So you need to start looking at that as well. We are stitching the fabric of time right now. So things are moving faster. When things are moving faster, the stresses are going to be different. The solutions to those stresses are going to be different. So that's why you need that kind of a sensibility in terms of consciousness. There is a very fundamental part of consciousness also that we can talk about, which is the more sensitive aspect. It could be a response. It could be a response to a situation where you have a dying art and your conscience feels the need of a sense of revivalism in that, and you start imbibing that in your work, and that starts giving it some leverage. So that also could encompass that, but I think that's a very myopic way of looking at the overall consciousness. So I think as architects and designers, we are just evolving ourselves. The more we are going to handle stresses in terms of different situations, the better we are going to be able to take instinctive design decisions and solutions. And I think there's nobody in this room who would not want to be or not want to indulge into conscious design. So yeah, that's my take.
So you think contextuality and conscious design goes hand in hand, and when you design, location does play a very important role. Like, we don't want to be like the slide that Indrajit has shown us.
See, contextuality is important. So we are always interpreting design as architects and designers, and this is an example that I give a lot of students, that we make one building and then we make sure that we do not repeat it. Hamare client ko bura lag jayega, right? And look at Apple, they made one phone. They sold 15 million of those, right? So is the iPhone contextual? So is contextuality limiting you? I think we need to start thinking beyond this. Yeah. So Yes, I agree with him when he says that all these buildings look the same. But yes, we will have to make something which can repeat itself, is sensible, is conscious, and is contextual in that context, and it can be a hybrid. Why not?
Absolutely. I think the other edge that you added to maybe my list of trends would be to make projects or buildings which are more timeless and which also stand the test of time at the same time, which is where the choice of materials really comes in. So, you know, in fact, I'm sure you as a company must be investing a lot of, a lot into research of materials. So would you be able to tell us what are the materials that globally are currently, are being spoken about and should and are being used?
See, we do spend a lot of time and effort understanding what kind of materials are required. More than anything else, we spend a lot of time and effort trying to find applications that require these materials. Now, for a simple example, traditionally you used to have what you call vents or, jalis. They would be carved out of stone, or they were subsequently made out of GRC. But we find today that there are ways and means to create these with cement boards, and some of them we've displayed at the back there, but they are gaining in popularity in traditional forms of construction because the product is adaptable. It can withstand the same kind of weathering elements that traditional products did. Today, when we go out and we engage in these kind of events with experienced designers, knowledgeable designers, they give us a lot of ideas. Then we take it back to our R&D center and we say that these are the ideas. Of course, there is always a guideline around which we work, around certain norms of being green, certain norms of carbon emission, being environmentally friendly, not harming the environment in any way. These are conscious decisions some organizations do take. And we also as an organization tend to take these decisions based on certain norms which have been set forth. I mean, we don't set forth, there are, you have these global bodies or national bodies who set the green norms or the carbon emission norms. How we try and operate within that and become a conscious producer to supply efficient products. So we basically say, there are ways and means you can today reimagine design, you can reimagine efficiency, you can reimagine sustainability by looking at alternatives, by looking at alternative materials. And the world has started evolving and doing it. And India, we are a follower to what's happening internationally.
Absolutely. In fact, one thing that comes to my mind is that I think what we really need to learn from global designers or architects is how to develop our wellness design within the country. That's something which we realized over the pandemic, how much we lack in there. So maybe Gaurav, you could tell us what we could learn or what we could draw from what's happening internationally in the wellness industry for design in India.
See, I mean, as far as wellness goes, okay, this is something, I'm sorry, I'm probably not answering a question here, but I've always I think during the second presentation, someone talked about how we're adding more and more layers to everything, and we're going far away, so far away from where we started, where we don't even know where we are. So it's like, I'll just give you an example, hospitals, hospitals, none of us, hospitals are supposed to be where we recover and where we are. But they're probably the worst places where we would want to be, we dread it spatially there. So we've gone so far away, okay, from a lot of things. So we would be very careful not to, if I were to recover somewhere, it would be a nice open window with a garden in front, it would not be less air conditioned. Yes, I understand germs, I understand all of those things exist, okay, but what I'm saying is that it's very important that I think contextuality is important. I think perception is important. I think all of these things are very important I think what we are reeling from now are formulas made 30 years back, okay, which have really turned themselves hollow today. And I think we need to reinvent them, because this is not the trajectory we want to head in. So I think continuously asking those questions and reinventing the wheel is necessary, and it's up to us, and the newer generation, you know, with the paradigm shift. We can talk about Corbusier, we can talk about, but I think architecture is changing. A hotel is this today, maybe hotel in 5 years time, 10 years time could be a collection of rooms in independent houses, you know. It could be that, you know. I think there is going to be, because that's the only way we're going to deal with the growth. You know, that's the only way we can deal with. We can't keep on building the way we are. We can't keep on developing the way we are. It's
That's
not possible.
true, yeah. I think, Rudransh, you worked on some wellness projects as well. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you think we can draw from the international trends?
Wellness is a state of health, I think, ultimately. I think people are going to experience spaces, and they're going to somehow derive comfort and composure out of them. Okay, I don't think that designing luxurious spaces has got anything to do with wellness anymore. Different people behave differently in different spaces, you know. For somebody, a glossy air-conditioned environment is very comfortable, and for somebody like him, he wants a window overlooking a green, and does not care about the germs. So it's not the physicality associated with it. It is what your mind is telling you, or what you are happy about. And that's the wellness. So I don't think there is going to be an objective answer to this question. People like wellness in terms of Vana-like properties, you know. That's because of the urban jungle. So they just want to detox. They feel that they're going to heal themselves mentally by being in that state. And if somebody is, for a hermit, his sense of wellness would be something completely different, you know. Think about a couple staying in the hills in a village. Their sense of wellness is going to be completely different from people coming from an urban jungle.
Maybe what you're saying is right. So I think I'm going to, please.
What I feel in terms of wellness today, wellness is essentially a comfort factor, like you said, of the mind, of the body, of the soul, or whatever it is. And how do we obtain it generally? See, it's like the moment we travel out of a city, like he again said, you start feeling nice when the nature hits upon you. The problem today that we are facing today is that we are staying in buildings which have been so functional for some reason that, you know, the whole idea is to stuff maximum people in minimum space. I think this is what is happening to architecture around the world. And this is not the whole way people should be working. Like today, if you look at us and look at the generation of our parents, I think they work from a 9-to-5 job, we work from a 9-to-9 job, and then you call us for 10 conferences. And so with all that, we are all the time running. So the wellness component, the experiential component is increasing, the wellness component is reducing. The wellness component comes in when we are true to understanding the circadian rhythms. We all know our body functions different organs of the body perform optimally at different times of the day. But if we are totally disconnected to the sun, disconnected to the nature, and we are staying in enclosed boxes like this, I am sure the wellness aspect goes down, psychosomatic problems start, and a lot of trauma starts increasing, which is true with today's world. So absolutely, I feel it's time that we open the box, connect to nature, look at realism of cities. When the urban inflow is so high, create large open spaces, have to go vertical. I think what the Saudi Arabia Sultan is doing is a very wise thing, reducing the carbon footprint. You know, like a Bangalore airport, we see thousands of taxis flying people every day, and how much of fuel is wasted. So create compact cities with lot of green open space, towers where people can walk through the cities, or maybe a short metro drive. These are things that we need to enhance to increase the wellness.
I completely agree with you, but what I would now probably want to wrap up with each one of you is that maybe we should talk about two things, I won't call them trends now, two things that architects should do and two they shouldn't. So maybe we can start with you, Babu.
I think Sumisha is shying away from an original question of what the global trend should be. I think you should stick on to that. That's what I want to say, because throughout history, designers and architects have always mused about this particular thing, what the future design would be. So this has been a question that has always been, that's not something that just cropped up now. So in 1930s, when they wanted to know what the future design of the world trends would be, the French architect Le Corbusier thought, or the people associated with him, they had a school of thought that the future would be more concrete buildings well laid out with green patches of a garden. That would be the future. After the Second World War, the Buckminster Fullerton thought it would be a Dymaxion house where they will be using lesser water, and this will become, that would be an inexpensive proposition which would become very popular in future, and that would be the trend. So this has always been there, whether it's on the build form, whether it's been on fashion, whether it's been on cuisine, always the trend, people are always looking out for trends. So I would say that this will keep continuing. So one thing I would like to address is in future, as I've been an advocate of vernacular architecture, I would say that as it has been there for thousands of years, it would still continue to be a trend. Moreover, the fourth industrial revolution, as one might call it, there would be a happy marriage of craftsmanship and technology. That is what I believe. If at all there would be a trend, that would be it.
That sounds really interesting. But let's have a quick round. Two trends that are here to stay and two that shouldn't be here.
Can I answer this differently?
Sure.
See, I don't think.
I see everybody's scared to say what trends are not to stay.
So I'm saying, let's all of us put ourselves in this pool. We can call all ourselves architects and designers. We can call all ourselves architects and designers. And we look at architecture as a conscious body with 2,000, 5,000 years of history. And I think all architects, rather than trends, they should start looking at their footprint on architecture. Okay? So what is going to be your contribution to architecture, which is going to be enjoyed by architects in the future to come? So I'll give you an example. Zaha Hadid has a impact on architecture. She would have done something. Maybe she did not do a lot of things, but there is a complete thought process that has derived because of that, and in a didactic different direction. Laurie Baker had a completely different footprint on architecture. I think we should not concentrate on trends. We should concentrate on our original contribution to architecture, which is actually going to be what our legacy is to that global consciousness of architecture. And not doing that is the only thing we should not do.
That sounds interesting. And now we have buildings like the Museum of the Future that are being built in Dubai. So yeah,
it's already built, and the Emiratis are calling it the best building in the world.
I would have loved to know your opinions on that building, but maybe for another day. Gaurav, would you like to tell us about trends that we shouldn't be following?
Shouldn't follow is probably stick one thing on another thing. Just do that first thing well. Don't stick another thing on it.
We're not stacking anymore.
I'm sorry?
Not stacking anymore.
Not stacking, yeah. So, I mean, this is layers. No? Again, we remove the layers. Again, I think assess layers. What, mentioned is assess layers. We are always looking at layers. We're like window, breeze, dust, mosquito, etc. You get what I'm saying, and security, right? These are your layers. And like, okay, what am I, so concrete, if I make it in concrete, it's 4 inches thick. I can make it in 2 inches. And all the concrete is mainly taking its own weight. You know, so how can I make it so small where it's just what I need? It's just for all of this. So I think that becomes very important in terms of design. We have to be very conscious of what you need. You know, you don't build anything more than that. You just don't. And design comes there. I really feel that, you know, it comes there, it comes, this thing, like a car, you know, if you see the old Ambassador car, that was the thing of strength, right? That was the idea of strength. You had this huge MS body, mild steel body, really heavy cars, and that was supposed to keep the person inside safe. But as technology moved on, it's like that's probably the worst thing you can be in, because your vibrations are passing through and going into the body. But what you need is, in fact, a lighter structure which crumbles. So I feel that is the difference between the old school and the new school. You know, we have to be more sensitive. We have to understand those, you know, those things. We need that in our design.
Absolutely agree with you. Babu, would you like to say some
All
final words?
I have to say is, like, you know, as architect designers, whatever we do and whatever we build, we are definitely going to leave a mark behind. So that's something which somebody, no one can erase away. It's going to be there. So all I have to say to the present day architects and the future architects is, like, you know, whatever we build and whatever mark we leave behind should be reasonably good. It should not hang around your neck like a dead fish, because it'll keep on stinking.
Fantastic. So when you're making a mark, make sure what kind of a mark you want to make. Indrajit, what do you think is the future of architecture?
The future is very interesting because we are seeing a lot of diversity. And when I look at our country in the context, we went from a country which was ruled for thousands of years. We were a poor country. We had to be very frugal in architecture. Today we are seeing an economic boom in our country. It is giving us a lot of leverage to play, to experiment and do a lot of things. And in the audience we see a lot of brilliant architects with a lot of diversity of work. And I think the beauty lies in this diversity. Different flavors, different experiences. And that's what is going to be a beautiful future.
That sounds fantastic. Rahul, last words. You are offering an innovative product to the market, to all the architects. So what is it that you would urge them to think of when they design in the future?
You see, according to me, architects and designers are one set or group of people who play a very large role and have a very large impact in making the world a better place. And I don't think any other profession can have that impact like architects and designers do. You are that one group of people, one profession who can make this world truly a better place to live in. And I would sincerely urge all of you to always keep that in mind. Secondly, you are also a group of people who can help preserve the natural resources of this earth, of the world, and ensure that we are environmentally conscious. Somewhere along the line, you know, even as manufacturers, even as common people, all along the way, we tend to economize, we tend to take shortcuts to try and achieve certain objectives, which may not be totally beneficial in terms of the environmental aspect. But we all need to be very conscious of it. We all need to be conscious of CO2 emission norms, of the green issues, and let's all, I mean, jointly all work together to make this world a far better place than what we have today. Thank you.
Absolutely, very well said. On that note, I think keeping in mind all the discussions that we've had today, not just now, talking about technology, talking about conscious design, talking about trends, and talking about the future of design, I think one thing that I can very proudly say, keeping in mind all the architects that are amongst us today, that the future definitely looks very, very bright. Please give a round of applause for all our panelists and all our winners today.